Carlos, really, fintech 2 years ago was seen as a competition to the banks, but now it's side banks to provide service to their client to enrich their experience. And actually, this is let me wondering and want to bring Mr. Fouad Nassrallah, AGM Head of TF at APK, to shed the light about where are you, Mr. Nassrallah, in your trade digitalization journey now?
Excuse me, let me add something what Akram said about some challenges and pain points that every bank is facing, and not ABK only. As according to COVID-19 crisis, observe that it has arrived during that transformative period for trade finance, and especially in automation and digitalization. In my opinion is, sorry, I'm talking about pandemic. In my opinion, it is COVID-19 is the world #1 enemy. It changed the entire world of business. That's why trade finance has been affected by self-isolation and not by a war. Imagine that the problem and the worst problem of this pandemic is the rapid growth of this disease was a shock. Low growth everywhere, loss in economic, and causing suffering. I'm talking about the disadvantages. But if you look from a different angle, we will observe that pandemic has an advantages. And this pandemic advantages is making a technology revolution for business, obliged for rapid digitalization to run towards automation and to enhance workflow and process, and to make it quickly and efficiently. That's why I can consider that digital transformation has become a matter of survival.
I see.
That's why every financial sector need to strengthen their ability to finance their own trade by technology, because they recognize that technology can play a major role. So I assume that digitalization, automation is a must, and we have to run after it, even if we have an obstacles nowadays. To me, the digital banking in our bank allows our customer for 24/7 access to their accounts. They can check their statements, and they can make payment transactions without any manual intervention. And that's why ABK always striving for technology-driven excellence to let our customer get best experience. Now, the ABK digital journey strategy for the future is A2, B2, C2. Artificial intelligence, automation, blockchain, big data, cloud, and cyber security. Trade finance now for the robotic process automation has been launched for a number of processes, along with proof of concept and BPR, business process reengineering. The most important thing in ABK now, we have cash and trade online. So the customer can, by self-service, open from his company, present an LC application or LG application directly to our system, without his presentation to our counter at the bank. We will issue the LC and open it and shoot to him. In his history, he will find a review for that LC has been issued, and he will follow the status on that. This is called cash and trade. The automation journey for us, I think it will enable ABK to migrate all repeated task work to a digital work. And I am sure this will reskill our staff to deliver more values added activities. Thank you.
Thank you for this. Actually, I couldn't agree more with you that about the importance and the necessity of digitalization. Yes, agree it's a must, but I think it is not the only factor. There is another factor should be considered in the same way. If you don't have a policy and the good regulations to protect and giving that solid base for digitalizations, you have to have a legal frame for that, regularity, and the policies to admit. Without policy and without regulations, I think it will be a big challenge for that, and that's why I want to ask Carlos here. As you have seen from Mr. Nassrallah, that he emphasizes about the digitalization is a must. What advice can you offer to the panel all about that, and how can financial institution make SWIFT tangible process? But before you answer this one, I would rather prefer to launch the polling questions for all the panel, and you can come back for that.
All right, excellent. Launching the poll question now. Where are you in your trade digitalization journey? All right, there we go. We'll give everyone about 20 seconds to answer.
I'm not able.
You don't see the polling question, Fouad?
I'm not able to see the question, please.
Okay.
Yeah, now. Where are you?
Question that you have answered. Where are you in your trade digitalization journey? I'd start around 1 year, 2 year in, 3 or more year in.
I'll give it about 2 more seconds and then I'll close the poll.
That's very important to know how the other panelists think about that.
Closing the poll now, and I'm going to just share the results with you all. There we go.
Very interesting. At the start, taking 57%, around 1 year is 29, 3 or more years in 14. Now it's very interesting to you, Mr. Carlos. How can you advise us in that?
I would just start by highlighting one thing that Mr. Fouad raised, and it's true that for a world of paper, which is what trade finance is all about, and we all know that. I remember my days at the bank that I used to have my desk full of documents, pile of documents, sometimes that I would be hidden behind. That's the reality. COVID had a massive impact to a point, and now highlighting to the second fact, digitization is not anymore a why question, is a when. And that's what we see by the corporates asking to every single bank is, when can I do this? And my advice, and I'll be very, very, let's say, fast on it because of the time constraint, I would ask you to have a look to what is your customer looking for. Ensure that it's focused on self-service. They need to feel that that is there for them. They have visibility. Mr. Fouad, I highlighted that my customer can review the transaction once I approve it. He can follow it up. That's key. If you are just doing the digitization in order to replace the branch, you are setting up for failure. You need to provide the necessary tools for the corporate to self-service, self-manage, and have control of their exposure. Understand where they sit today, but more importantly, in 2 months, 3 months, understand the forecast. And then, of course, that my advice would be don't build it. You have providers like ourselves that have it out of the box, the full scope, where you can go live very quickly. So just leverage that in order for you to be able to provide that very soon to your customers. That would be my advice.
Very interesting. Thank you, Carlos, about that. Anyone want to jump in to make a follow-up for what Mr. Nassrallah and Carlos mentioned now?
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, please. Proceed.
This question is for Mr. Amr. No, this question for Mr. Carlos. Did we end death with this digitalization?
Did we end?
Did we end death with digitalization? Difficult question.
That's an interesting question, Mr. Fouad.
No, I'm not confusing. I'm not confusing. That means if digitalization has spread everywhere, transformation is there, everything.
So one thing for sure, Mr. Fouad, COVID has brought the digital future forward. That's a reality, right? And we see, and when I talk about this, let's forget technology for a moment, because the biggest problem we had on trade finance was the regulator. Right? Still today, in order for you to go to court with a client that because it didn't fulfill these obligations, you need a paper signed by the client, being a bill of exchange, being something else. And that has been the biggest stopper. And what the pandemic has done was the likes of the ITFA or even the Abu Dhabi Global Markets, where they actually embraced and they have expedited the whole enforceability around electronic negotiable documents like promissory notes and bill of exchange. This is an amazing first step where I can see being the important one in order for us to digitize trade finance, because we mentioned in the beginning the UCP. UCP was released in 2000. It's 21 years ago. It never really took off. So the regulator from an ICC perspective was there. The technology has always been there, because if you go back SDocs or even Bolero, they've been in the market for many years, right? But the reality is at the end of the day, if I go to pick up my goods, the customs needs to have a paper. The paper needs to go with the goods. And at the end, if I need to go to court, I still need a paper signed by the customer. And this is where I see the market changed and driven by COVID. And that's a massive change beyond all the work that Finastra has been doing with ICC. And I'm sure you guys saw what we have done around the trade com, so providing financing, cheaper financing to the SMEs, starting by Latin America with ICC from that side, or even leading from a digitization regulation with ICC and the World Trade Board, for example. But the reality is that this first step was very important, and I see this moving forward now very fast.
Carlos, is there any ICC rules and practices for digitalization?
So there is a workforce group led by SDocs, interestingly, and supported by Finastra and other participants, where they actually have scheduled to, during this year, to have the electronic ICC, or let's say the EUCP reviewed, aligned with the regular practice.
EUCP is there. Now let us come to the EUCP. If you have a bill digitized signature is there. Is it acceptable?
Today, not in all the terms, not in all the customs, not in all the governments. No, it's not. And that's the problem, isn't it, Mr. Fouad?
And may I know what is the role, what is the I'm sorry, I'm leaving, let me leave the question for others.
No, okay, please proceed.
What role did digitalization play in the crude oil business? You are fully aware, Mr. Carlos, in the oil business, all the bankers here, participants, they know what is oil business and what is the technicality. Some of them that bill of lading are not ready, is not ready, and they will use an LOI, letter of indemnity. All these things to be submitted because the vessel is still in the sea. What is the digitalization play on this? How? it will be useful. Can you know the status of the vessel and the bill of lading, where it is on the spot, immediately online? That's what I'm.
So, and here that's where the wider ecosystem comes in play, and it's key, right? So with the likes of the companies like Enigio. So Enigio today, they are able to put a digital stamp into a signature saying that if I issue a letter of undertaking, for example, it's on behalf of Mr. Fouad. They put a stamp on their DLT platform saying that the owner of this document is Mr. Fouad. And if you sell it to me, then they actually replace that. And this was the first step in order to have a DGM and ITFA, to certify digital signatures in terms of a digital framework on documents to be legally recognized, because that's the issue. So I saw that as a first step, but this still needs to be complemented with other vendors like Lloyd's or CargoX and so on, where they can give you a GPS coordinate of where does the vessel sit. All these together, then you are able to have in real time, not only understand who is the ownership of that goods or on that terms in terms of responsibility, but more importantly, where does the vessel sit as it stands now? And that's where I see this helping banks from an oil perspective.
Mr. Amr, what is the legal impact of digitization? Tomorrow when there is a court order and we'll go to the court, they need the physical paper and not the digitized one.
You're right, you're right. Unless as electronic laws is already issued, it should be issued and should be adopted in regulation. As I mentioned to you from the beginning, it's not only about the digitalization. It's need attention from the regulator to regulate all of these issues. But I think that there is some amendment related to appeal to leading law recently has been issued in Kuwait, adopting some electronic bringing electronic procedure